Hi Hugo. I'm going to carry on where I left off with The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. Um, just to recap, I think Lucy went into the wardrobe and she came out into that magical place, and she found a faun called Mr. Tumnus, and Mr. Tumnus took her to stay at his house, and they had tea and everything. But then Mr. Tumnus, he Lucy, he was going to tell the White Witch about Lucy being there, and he felt really bad, and he took Lucy back to the lamppost with the entrance to the wardrobe, and she went home again, I think. And that's where we pick up. I hope everything's okay with you whenever you see this. Just wanted to say I think about you all the time. And here we go. So, Edmund and the wardrobe. Lucy ran out of the empty room into the passage and found the other three. "It's all right," she said. "I've come back." "What on earth are you talking about, Lucy?" asked Susan. "Why," said Lucy in amazement, "haven't you all been wondering where I was?" "So you've been hiding, have you?" said Peter. "Poor old Lou, hiding and nobody noticed. You'll have to hide longer than if you want people to start looking for you." "But I've been away for hours and hours," said Lucy. The others all stared at one another. "Batty," said Edmund, tapping his head. "Quite batty." "What do you mean, Lou?" asked Peter. "What I said," answered Lucy. "It was just after breakfast when I went into the wardrobe, and I've been away for hours and hours and had tea, and all sorts of things have happened." "Don't be silly," said Lucy, said Susan. We've only just come out of that room a moment ago, and you were there then." "She's not being silly at all," said Peter. "She's just making up a story for fun, aren't you, Lou? And why shouldn't she?" "No, Peter, I'm not," she said. It's a magic wardrobe. There's a wood inside, and it's snowing, and there's a faun and a witch, and it's called Narnia. Come and see." The others did not know what to think, but Lucy was so excited that they all went back with her into the room. She rushed ahead of them, flung open the door of the wardrobe, and cried, "Now, go in and see for yourself." "Why, you goose," said Susan, putting her head inside and pulling the fur coats apart. "It's just an ordinary wardrobe. Look, there's the back of it." Then everyone looked in and pulled the coats apart, and they all saw, Lucy herself saw, a perfectly ordinary wardrobe. There was no wood and no snow, only the back of the wardrobe with hooks on it. Peter went in and rapped his knuckles on it to make sure that it was solid. "A jolly good hoax, Lou," he said as he came out again. "You have really taken us in, I must admit. We half believed you." "But it wasn't a hoax at all," said Lucy. "Really and truly, it was all different a moment ago. Honestly, it was, I promise." "Come, Lou," said Peter. That's going a bit far. You've had your joke. Hadn't you better drop it now?" Lucy grew very red in the face, and tried to say something, though she hardly knew what she was trying to say, and burst into tears. For the next few days she was very miserable. She could have made it up with the others quite easily at any moment if she could have brought herself to say that the whole thing was only a story made up for fun. But Lucy was a truthful girl, and she knew that she really was in the right, and she could not bring herself to say this. The others, who thought she was telling a lie, and a silly lie too, made her very unhappy. The two elder ones did this without meaning to do it, but Edmund could be spiteful, and on this occasion he was spiteful. He sneered and jeered at Lucy, and kept on asking her if she'd found any other new countries in other cupboards all over the house. What made it worse was that these days ought to have been delightful. The weather was fine, and they were out of doors from morning to night, bathing, fishing, climbing trees, and lying in the heather. But Lucy could not properly enjoy any of it, and so things went on the next wet day. That day, when it came to the afternoon and there was still no sign of a break in the weather, they decided to play hide and seek. Susan was it, and as soon as the others scattered to hide, Lucy went to the room where the wardrobe was. She did not mean to hide in the wardrobe, because she knew that would only set the others talking about the whole wretched business. But she did not want to have one more look inside. For by this time she was beginning to wonder herself whether Narnia and the Faun had not been a dream. The house was so large and complicated and full of hiding places that she thought she would have time to have one look in the wardrobe and then hide somewhere else. But as soon as she reached it, she heard steps in the passage outside. And then there was nothing for it but to jump into the wardrobe and hold the door closed behind her. She did not shut it properly because she knew it was very silly to shut yourself into a wardrobe, even if it is not a magic one. Now, the steps she heard were those of Edmund, and he came into the room just in time to see Lucy vanishing into the wardrobe. He at once decided to go into it himself, not because he thought it was a particularly good place to hide, but because he wanted to go on teasing her about her imaginary country. He opened the door. There were the coats hanging up as usual, and a smell of mothballs, and darkness, and silence, and no sign of Lucy. She thinks I'm Susan come to catch her, said Edmund to himself, and so she's keeping very quiet at the back. He jumped in and shut the door, forgetting what a very foolish thing this is to do. Then he began feeling about for Lucy in the dark. He had expected to find her in a few seconds, and was very surprised when he did not. He decided to open the door again and let some light in, but he could not find the door either. He didn't like this at all, and began groping wildly in every direction. He even shouted, "Lucy, Lou, where are you? I know where you are. I know you're here." There was no answer, and Edmund noticed that his own voice had a curious sound. Not the sound you expect in a cupboard, but a kind of open-air sound. He also noticed that he was unexpectedly cold, and then he saw a light. "Thank goodness," said Edmund. "The door must have swung open of its own accord." He forgot all about Lucy and went toward the light, which he thought was the open door of the wardrobe. But instead of finding himself stepping out into the spare room, he found himself stepping out from the shadow of some thick, dark fir trees into an open place in the middle of a wood. I'll just carry on in a minute, Hugo.